work is an enormous departure from anything that I've done before, and I've been working on it for the last 3-4 years. So it started when I was last having a show upstairs, and I was doing sculpture pieces about our life in the desert, in the high desert Joshua Tree. And in working in my studio, I took a photograph of one of the sculpture pieces that had a funny cap and a swirly thing on top, and noticed that the shadow of the piece on the wall was very interesting. And I thought, oh, I haven't talked about like moon shadows yet, about the desert, so maybe I'll do some pieces for that. So I did some small prints that are some small discs, like 18 inches, with the shadow of this piece. And then during the course of the show, I kept looking at these discs and going, this is cool looking, and so it just led to more and more, and when that show was over, I embarked on this body of work. So the circular I'm going to walk through, but the circular pieces are mostly taken from photos of the elements of the sculpture pieces that I did about the desert. And after doing these circles, I then started making the rectangular pieces, and thought, I don't have to take photographs of the elements about the desert. I could just take photographs of the desert itself. So that's the primarily that's all the work is. I came up with the idea of using plexiglass that I have sanded, so that it kind of diffuses the surface of it. You don't get any of that shine, and it gives it a certain kind of depth to it. And then all of these rectangular pieces are printed on the back of the plexiglass, as opposed to the more brightly colored ones that are right behind you. And in that room there, where I printed them in the front of the plexiglass. And the reason that I did it is because I wanted that feeling of when you're outside in the desert and the landscape is enormous and vast and the sun is way too bright, that there's an aspect of you having to squint to engage in it. And it is both engaging and it sort of keeps you away at the same point. So if you look at the pieces that are printed in the back, you can kind of sort of tell that the image is not just forward, that you're looking through, even though it's 1/4 of an inch, that there's a little bit of depth to it. And then with the more brightly printed ones that are in the front, I was after that time, like springtime in the desert, when out of a landscape that looks like it's completely dead come these crazy super blooms of flowers and colors. And so I wanted the strong color, and I wanted it kind of in your face feeling. There's a similar process that I kind of go through if I'm working with found materials or I'm working with images. It is the sort of intuitive, spontaneous juxtapositioning of elements together. So if it's two pieces of, if it's wood that I'm working with, it's trying to see like what pieces are compatible or talk to each other or have a relationship with each other. And then if I find those two pieces, then a third piece gets added to it. Kind of similar when I'm using photographs. It's kind of playing around. It's not really knowing what I'm doing. It's kind of an accidental approach and finding combinations that speak to me until I have that kind of aha moment of, oh, I think I know where I'm doing now.
So the photography aspect is that the prime base of your work in this exhibit, and then you've added to it, or is it?
It is all photography.
Right.
I do not think of myself as a photographer, so it is, you could say that it's just the material that I'm using are the photographs.
Right.
There is, well, let me explain how I do it, so maybe that'll answer your question. So if you were to just to take this. There could be somewhere between 5 and 15 images that are in here. I print them at my desk on vellum paper, which is just a regular paper stock, kind of semi-sheer. And the reason I print them on vellum is that it kind of most imitates sanded plexiglass. So I print them at my desk, and then I will cut them up and collage them and find the combinations, scotch tape it all together. It's very rudimentary. Stick it in front of a light box so that it lets the light in, and I can see the image, and I can kind of see what it's going to sort of look like when it gets here. And then there's some digital work. So I've got to erase all those lines where the images are pasted together, and then enhance certain things. And I may add a moon or something to it, or make it bigger, or that kind of thing. Then as a digital file, it goes to a print shop. So before they print on the plexiglass, I have them print on film, which is what that material is there. And the reason there is because, again, it kind of imitates plexiglass, and it's cheap, whereas plexiglass is very expensive. So we print on film as a test. I make some more adjustments, and then it gets printed on.
Is this one printed on the back?
And then this is printed on the back. So if you were to stand over here, or kind of on the other side, you can kind of see. You can kind of see it. For one reason, I kind of like the way the prints look when they're printed on this film. So I thought maybe there's something I can do with it. And then I was after that fading light. You know, when you're out in the desert and the horizon is enormous, the sun goes down really slowly and the light fades really slowly. And I wanted to create that impression. I mean, the desert is the wonderful thing. The thing that's really going on is all of me that I'm bringing to it, and my interpretation of how it makes me feel, and the peace that it brings, or the stimulation that it brings. I don't necessarily love it all. I find it kind of very difficult and sort of offensive place to be, because it's like too hot, it's too prickly. There are too many weird-looking creatures and animals. I'm basically a suburban, urban gal, so this is totally, I'm not a hiker or any of those things. This is all my observations from my house and walking up Canyon Road. So anyway, I wanted that fading light, and then when I did this and came up with this, I very much appreciated the aspect of it where it's reflected, and it feels like almost like now we're talking about water and not desert any longer, and I just like sort of playing back and forth with that. So here's images of light coming through the sky and branches, and then I have some fake spiders that I have that I took a picture, and they're embedded in here, and cactus turned on its side, and so it's basically, I think of them more as like mindscapes than landscapes. And with this one, so this is one of the earlier ones that, as I said, I took photographs of elements of my sculpture pieces about the desert. So all this hairy stuff down here was part of a sculpture piece where I was kind of talking about those creatures and spiders and weird stuff in the desert. This image up here was taken when Steve and I got in our car one evening. I went to back out of the garage, and here, and I looked in my camera in my car, and this basically was the image that I saw. So it was the red lights, and then the light that's shining on a cactus back there. And I went, that's such a cool image. I'll take a photograph of the image in my camera. And then I used it here. That's why it's called reverse. there's a lot of kind of repetition of images in different pieces through the show. And I, like in that last piece down there, there's, at the end, there's that same element that's up top there. Anyway, I wanted to repeat some of the images because I wanted one to feel, after looking through the whole show, that you're seeing an image over here that you may have seen over there, but you don't necessarily remember it from over there. You just go, that looks familiar, I think I saw that before. So that by the time you're done, you feel like you've been someplace, that you almost know this place a little bit, and you have some familiarity with it. So these pieces these collages were done after these prints were made, and I could take the film tests and cut them up and lay them out on the floor and do these collage pieces. On the one hand, trying to like mix it up again, say, here's a jumble of everything else. So, as I say, this is all happening in our yard, walking up the road. I see the same cactus and the same trees and the same landscape all the time, over and over. But it's never the same. It's always a different day, it's a different time of day, it's a different season, the sun, the light. So here's me just reshuffling all of that. Those wooden pieces are from a sculpture piece that I did that was upstairs, and it was about, so you live in the desert, you know, so we have a lot of glass around our house, and often, sad story, the birds will come and not realize that they're flying into their reflection. And so after not being in the desert for a while, we'll go there and we'll have all these like bird crucifixes, you know, in our window. So I did an homage to them in the sculpture piece, and so it's included in there. Oh, that's the other thing I want to talk about. So one of the things that, one of the aspects of the climate out there is you get these huge winds, crazy wild winds that come up out of nowhere, last for 15 minutes, it's all over. But in the course of that time, you can get all this like trash and garbage from the houses next door that land in your yard and land against the building. And so my interest in having these pieces be so flat to the wall and not framed and not extended out of the wall was, to me, it speaks to that. It speaks to the sort of almost accidental aspect of pinning the image to the wall rather than attaching it to it, if that makes any sense. This piece of this basic photographs, you can see the hills in the background. So the back photograph is a photo that I took walking up Canyon Road from our house up into the Joshua Tree National Park. Along the way, there's kind of like a grove of smoke trees. So smoke trees are very delicate looking. They're these beautiful tan colors. They're very open and lacy looking, but they're devilish. Everything that you think is a piece of lace is actually a needle. And so in this bubble here, it is a smoke tree. So the reality is walking up Canyon Road and then here trying to create the momentum of the wind and the climate pushing you up the road. But it's sort of encapsulating in I would like to think, sort of mysterious way what these smoke trees are about and how incongruent they are. And so the authenticity would be the road itself, and then my adding to it my feelings of being in that environment. This is in front, again, as I said, are printed on the front of the plexiglass. And, you know, so again, there's an aspect in the desert where it's all these like neutral colors, nothing's going on, everything looks half dead, and then there's brilliance there, like our pomegranate tree. So here was the pomegranate before the birds got to it, and then after the birds got to it. And then And then here, just trying to talk about like the wind and taking the seeds away, and I don't know, I have my whole little narrative that goes on about it. This is the, excuse me, the invitation piece right here. And then with these, I got into more digitizing the images and playing with them. Like in this form right here that you're looking at, we have a back door that's frosted glass, and on the outside of the door is this tree. And I walked into the room one day just at the perfect time when the light was behind the tree and got the image of the trunk there, and that's what that is. And then kind of played and manipulated with other things.
What were you working, what were the elements that you were?
Well, okay, so in this one here, so I think, honestly, I don't exactly remember right now, except to tell you that all of this portion of it right here, where it's all, the image is all broken up, that broken up stuff is actually as a result of taking a photograph of the ground, of the sand with the gravel in it, and that's what's adding the texture to it. And then, you know, again, a lot of it, just my coming up with all of that movement is about the wind and about the weather and about how things get all moved around.
So it doesn't matter to you how much the desert is evoked?
Well, you know, it doesn't matter, because that's sort of, that bit that I'm talking about is kind of enough to make me feel like I am embracing the desert in there. And even if I even depart from that and I still have it in the back of my head, it's still the desert.
That's important to you.
Yeah. I mean, will it be important for the next body of work that I do? I don't know, but for here.
Have you used this process with any imagery not taken from the desert originally?
No. Like taking photos of the elements from those pieces of the desert. When I did those pieces of the desert, I used a lot of artificial flowers and stuff because I thought it was funny because it's so darn real and organic out there that my way to comment on it was to use these artificial flowers. So that's, and the netting and stuff was also part of it. This also is a double disc. So they have a little bit more almost sort of decorative feel about them, but a little bit of darkness to it, a little bit of it being ensnared, the beauty being ensnared in difficult circumstances. And then again, I did these two layers because I felt like it needed some additional depth to it.
So Joan, which came first?
The chicken.
The image or the idea of the circle after you had the image?
Well, okay, so the circles were as a result of taking that first photograph of the metal piece and the gnarly thing and talking about moon shadow. So until I moved on to the rectangular ones, I was only thinking circles. I was only thinking circles because I was talking about the moon. And then after a number of those, I went, I don't have to do circles anymore. So, and I wanted it to be more about landscape.